I came back from my run early that morning, not for any particular reason. My knee had been acting up, and I cut my route short by a few blocks. I remember thinking I'd beat the traffic on the trail and maybe get in some extra stretching. Harmless stuff. I wasn't expecting anything. My mind was in that relaxed post-run haze. Sweaty shirt clinging to my back, lungs still cooling off, shoes tracking faint grass clippings into the hallway. And then I heard her. The bedroom door was cracked, just enough for sound to carry. Her voice floated down the hallway, soft and mate. About last night. You were amazing. 6 words. That's all I heard. But it felt like a slap to the back of my neck. The kind of cold, unmistakable sentence that doesn't belong in casual conversation. Not at 6:48 a.m., not whispered like that, not when it wasn't meant for me. I froze in place just past the coat rack. I didn't make a sound. Couldn't. At first, I thought maybe I'd misheard. Maybe it was some TikTok voiceover or a TV show playing on low volume. But the room was silent after that, no dialogue, no laughter. Just silence, like someone had realized they were no longer alone. I waited 5 seconds. 10. Nothing. Then, like I hadn't just heard my world shift 2 inches off its axis, I walked in. Haley was perched on the edge of the bed, legs crossed at the ankle, her phone in her lap. She looked startled when she saw me, but not in that over-the-top, "You scared me" way. It was more like she had just swallowed something sharp. "Oh," she said, trying to sound casual. "Hey, you're back early." "Yeah," I said, glancing at the clock on the wall. "Cut it short. My knee." She nodded quickly, too quickly, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I was just talking to Rachel," she added, like it had just occurred to her. "We're figuring out dresses for Chloe's party this weekend. She wants us all in jewel tones. Apparently, pastels are canceled." She forced a little laugh, like she was trying to fill the air before I could say anything else. But her posture was tight, too upright. Her eyes flitted away for a second too long. "Huh," I said, nodding like I bought it. Sounded like a passionate conversation. She blinked. "What?" I didn't repeat myself. I just walked past her to the dresser and started peeling off my sweat-drenched shirt. The cotton stuck to my skin like glue. "Oh," she said, and stood up, overly bright. "I should get the shower running before it gets cold." That was odd. She never showered this early unless we had plans. And she especially never gave up first dibs in the bathroom. As she darted into the master bath, I glanced down at her phone on the nightstand. "Now look, I'm not proud of this part. I'm not a snooper. We'd been together 3 years, and I'd never once touched her phone without asking. But that morning, that sentence I heard, it lit a fuse. Something was off, and every cell in my body knew it. I reached for the phone. Locked. Not unusual. We both kept our phones locked. But hers had a new password as of last week. Said her work email forced her to reset it because of some system upgrade. I believed her. I really did. But the timing of everything felt too aligned. So I did what any person riding the edge of panic would do. I tested the swipe down to see her recent call log. Nothing. No calls. Not even a missed one. The whole log was blank. Like someone had wiped the slate clean. Technically, that didn't prove anything. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe she'd updated the phone. Maybe the call really was from Rachel, and maybe Rachel really was talking about dresses, and maybe Haley quoted a meme or a TikTok, and maybe I'd walked in at the exact wrong time to hear something totally innocent. But even as I tried to rationalize it, my gut knew better. There was something about the way she spoke. The tone. That low warmth in her voice. That wasn't how you joke around with girlfriends about party dresses. Sounded close. Vulnerable. Like someone talking to a lover, not a coworker. I put the phone down exactly how I found it and walked out to the kitchen. Started pouring water into the kettle like nothing was wrong. She joined me a few minutes later, wrapped in a towel, hair damp. She moved quickly, too quickly, like she was trying to get ahead of something. She kissed my cheek, her lips cold from the shower. "Pancakes?" she offered, too brightly. "Sure," I said. "Haven't had those in a while." "I figured we could have a big breakfast," she said. "Slow morning." "You're not rushing to the office, right?" I watched her flip open the cabinet with unnecessary enthusiasm, pulling out the pancake mix we never used. This was her tell. Haley didn't over-explain when things were normal. She didn't oversell anything. But now she was laying it on thick. Domestic, cheerful, affectionate. All within 5 minutes of a suspicious whisper and a deleted call log. As she stirred the batter, she launched into a whole speech about Rachel's obsession with emerald green. How she hated the color but promised to wear it anyway. How Chloe always threw the worst parties but no one dared say it out loud. I nodded where appropriate, smiled even, but my brain was somewhere else entirely. I kept replaying that sentence. "You were amazing last night." It was too mate to dismiss, too precise to ignore. And if I hadn't come home early, if I hadn't shaved 5 minutes off my route, I never would have heard it. That thought haunted me more than the words themselves. Because what else had I missed? After that morning, something changed. Not in her, at least not visibly at first, but in me. It was like a switch flipped. I started paying closer attention. Not obsessively, not yet. Just watching. Noting patterns. You know how people say once doubt creeps in, it's hard to ignore? They're right. Because once you hear something that doesn't sit right, your brain starts highlighting everything you used to overlook. Like it's trying to solve a puzzle you didn't know existed. The first real crack came 2 days later. It was subtle. Haley had taken off her rings, engagement and wedding, and left them on the soap dish by the sink. At first, I didn't think anything of it. She took them off to wash her hands or do the dishes sometimes. Totally normal. But later that night, when I came back from taking out the trash, I found her in the bathroom, sliding the rings back on like she was trying to do it unnoticed. I watched from the hallway. She didn't know I was there. She caught my reflection in the mirror and jumped a little. "Oh," she said, smiling. "I forgot I left these here earlier. Almost went to bed without them." She laughed like it was nothing, but her hand moved too quickly, like she was in a rush to cover the act. I gave a polite chuckle and let it go. But the next morning, they were back in the dish again. And the next night, same story. After the third time, I stopped chalking it up to forgetfulness. It wasn't just a habit anymore. It was intentional, consistent, too consistent. Then came the laptop. Haley worked from home 3 days a week. She had a pretty relaxed schedule, mostly design work and client calls. We'd always had this rhythm. I'd pop in during her lunch break, steal a piece of fruit off her plate, make a dumb joke. She'd roll her eyes, smile, maybe show me something she was working on. That changed too. One afternoon, I walked into the room while she was at her desk, and she slammed her laptop shut like I'd caught her looking at something illegal. She laughed it off. Again. Said she was just reading about a dumb celebrity feud and didn't want me judging her. But she used to leave her laptop open all the time, even if she was watching garbage reality shows. Now, it snapped shut every time I walked by. Next thing I noticed? The phone. She'd always been the kind of person who left her phone lying around, on the counter, the coffee table, even in the bathroom. She didn't guard it like a secret. But now it was glued to her hand. Screen always tilted away from me. Face down on every surface. Silent mode all the time. And the passcode had changed again. When I asked her about it, she said her work required regular password updates. Something about client confidentiality. Plausible, sure. But I'd worked with clients too. I knew the protocols. I also knew the real reason people changed their passcodes that often, to keep someone out. Still, I said nothing. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I needed more than instincts. I needed something real. So I watched. Quietly. Closely. Sunday yoga used to be a 9 to 11 thing. She'd go with her friend Megan, hit the studio, maybe grab a smoothie after. It had been their tradition for over a year. But now she was gone until nearly 2 p.m. Sometimes later. When I asked, she'd smile and say the class ran long or they got caught up talking. "Sorry," she said once, brushing hair from her face, sweat glistening on her forehead. Megan needed to vent about her breakup. You know how she gets. But when I bumped into Megan at the grocery store the following week, I asked how she was holding up. She looked confused. Break up? Yeah, I said, pretending to be casual. Haley mentioned. Oh, that was months ago. We're good now. Actually, I haven't seen Haley in a few weeks. We've both been crazy busy. She smiled and moved on. I stood in the middle of the produce aisle gripping an apple so hard my knuckles turned white. Later that night, I asked Haley how Megan was doing, just to see what she'd say. Oh, same old, she said without missing a beat. Still a little raw about the breakup, but she'll be okay. She didn't even blink. That was when I realized. She was lying without hesitation now. No stammer, no guilt, no nervous smile, just smooth, practiced fiction. And then there was the bracelet. I saw it on a Thursday. Thin silver chain with a tiny letter charm. She never wore bracelets, said they annoyed her when typing, but this one appeared out of nowhere, like a secret whisper hanging from her wrist. I asked about it. She shrugged. Oh, this? Got it at the market last weekend. One of those little vendor stalls. I nodded. The letter R. Is that for Rachel? She paused for half a second too long. Yeah, it's like an inside joke. I smiled politely. Got it. Rachel's name had become a default cover. Dresses, jokes, jewelry. It all circled back to her. But here's the thing. Rachel's name doesn't start with an R. Her full name is Simone Rachel Nguyen. She goes by her middle name. Always has. It's literally in her email signature. So either Haley forgot her own lie, or she thought I wouldn't notice. Both options were bad. And if that wasn't enough, things got even weirder. She started buying me things. Out of nowhere. New shirts. A bottle of scotch I'd mentioned months ago. Portable espresso maker. Thoughtful gifts, too thoughtful. Just because, she said with a kiss on the cheek. You've been working so hard lately. It didn't feel like love. Felt like penance. Like she was trying to bury something under a pile of wrapped apologies. I kept a straight face every time. Smiled, thanked her, played my role. But inside, I was unraveling. Every piece of the puzzle was starting to click. The missing call log. The silent phone. The yoga sessions that weren't yoga. The sudden affection after days of distance. And worst of all, that letter R dangling from her wrist like a mocking reminder of someone she wouldn't name. My mind started spinning. Who was R? Was it someone at work? An ex? A friend I hadn't met yet? I started checking her schedule, noting times she said she'd be out. I'd glance at traffic patterns. Weather, anything that might prove or disprove her alibis. I was turning into someone I didn't recognize. Someone suspicious. Someone cautious. I hated it. I hated that I had to watch the woman I loved like a stranger in my own house. But I didn't know what else to do. She wasn't going to tell me the truth. Not on her own. And I couldn't accuse her without proof. But one thing had become clear. Whatever I was afraid of, it was already happening. It happened on a Tuesday. Midweek. Boring as hell, nothing special about it. The kind of day where your coffee tastes watered down and your inbox won't stop pinging, and everything just sort of drags. I wasn't expecting anything. I'd almost convinced myself that maybe I was wrong about all of it, that maybe I'd let my imagination spiral too far. Almost. That morning, Haley kissed me goodbye like she always did. She smelled like coconut conditioner and the same vanilla lotion she's worn since college. She looked me in the eye, told me she had a team drinks thing after work. Nothing big. Just unwinding with the department, she said, brushing lint off her blouse like that explained everything. Anyone I know? I asked casually. She paused at the door, thinking. Probably just Ryan and the others from marketing. Maybe Alicia. You wouldn't know most of them. Then she flashed a smile. Don't wait up, okay? And with that, she was gone. I stood there for a full minute after the door shut. There was something about the way she said Ryan's name. Too soft. Too casual. And I hadn't heard that name come up before. Not in any stories. Not in her work recaps. He was a ghost in her narrative. I walked to the kitchen, poured another coffee, then did something I told myself I wouldn't do. I opened the tracking app. It started as a safety thing. Months ago, we both agreed to install it. One of those couple apps for checking traffic, ETA updates, emergency alerts. Back when trust wasn't something I had to double-check. She had forgotten I still had the admin access. I tapped into her car's location. She wasn't heading downtown toward her office. Instead, her little blue dot was crawling west, past the business district, away from the bars and cafes near her workplace. I zoomed out. She was heading toward the edge of the city. Not quite suburbs. More like the no man's land between exits. Industrial strip malls. Gas stations. Chain hotels. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my keys, but I didn't leave. Not yet. I told myself I needed more than just a location on a map. I needed something that couldn't be twisted into a misunderstanding. Something she couldn't talk her way out of. I refreshed the app. She'd stopped moving. The address pinged. Delton Suites, executive location. I knew the place. Boutique hotel off the highway. Discreet. Not seedy, but not exactly 5 stars either. The kind of place you don't stumble into by accident. I waited. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. Then I did what I now regret not doing sooner. I logged into our shared credit card dashboard. 2 new charges. Both time-stamped within the last hour. The first, room 428, Deluxe King, booked using her loyalty number. The second, minibar, listed as Guest 2, Ryan S. Both charges were under her name. No splitting the bill. No attempt to hide it behind vague charges or cash. Just blatant. That was it. Not a misunderstanding. Not a dress joke. Not yoga. Ryan wasn't a coworker she barely knew. He was the second guest in a room she booked herself. I stared at the screen for a while. Not in shock, really. More like quiet surrender. This was the moment everything officially broke. When it all crossed the line from suspicion to reality. And I didn't even feel angry. I felt still. Cold, quiet clarity. I opened the tracking app again. She was still there. Still in the building. So I sent her a message. Nothing explicit. Just 6 words. Tell Ryan he left his bracelet. No emoji. No punctuation. Took exactly 60 seconds. I watched her location icons start moving. Fast. Straight down from the 4th floor to the lobby. Then toward the parking lot. She didn't reply. Didn't call. Didn't even ask what I meant. She just ran. I kept the screen open as she pulled out of the lot and jumped back on the freeway, heading east toward home. I stayed planted on the couch. Didn't pace. Didn't plan. Just sat there. The evidence open on my phone, watching her little blue dot crawl closer and closer to our neighborhood like nothing had happened. 40 minutes later, I heard the key in the lock. I didn't move. She walked in like she was short on breath, jacket half on, makeup slightly faded, hair no longer perfect. "Nate," she said, trying to sound confused. "What was that text? What bracelet?" I looked up at her. Didn't say anything. She blinked. "Are you okay?" I held up the phone and turned the screen to face her. Call log. Room number. Minibar charge. Her face changed. She didn't deny it. Didn't try to spin a story. She just sank into the armrest across from me and said, quietly, "You weren't supposed to find out like this. Like this was the problem. Like the betrayal itself was fine, so long as it stayed hidden." I didn't yell. Didn't ask how long. Didn't demand explanations. Not yet. Instead, I stood up, walked past her, and went into the office. In the drawer, I had the folder ready. I didn't expect to use it that day, but some part of me must have known. It held backup files, **TS, transaction summaries, even the bracelet she stupidly left in the side pocket of her gym bag last week. Letter R. That wasn't a coincidence. I walked back into the living room and set it all on the table between us. She didn't reach for it. Didn't cry. She just stared at it like it was a burning building and she was waiting to see if anyone would notice the smoke. I sat across from her. "You have 5 minutes," I said. "Not to fix it. Not to lie. Just to tell the truth." She looked at me, and for the first time in weeks, she looked afraid. The thing they don't tell you about betrayal is that once it becomes undeniable, it stops feeling like fire. Turns into ice. Cold logic. You stop wondering why and start calculating what now. That night, after she left the room, after she gave me 5 minutes of half-truths, deflections, and a few strained apologies, I didn't cry. I didn't scream or beg or ask for more answers. I didn't care if Ryan was just a mistake, or if they were confused about their feelings. None of it mattered anymore. Whatever they thought they had, it had cost me my trust. That was non-refundable. I waited until the house was quiet. Then I got to work. The first thing I did was log into our joint bank accounts. Everything that was shared, credit cards, savings, the rainy day fund we started when we moved in together, I flagged, transferred, or froze. I wasn't cruel about it. I didn't leave her stranded. But I wasn't about to let someone who lied to my face siphon resources from my name while they snuck off to boutique hotels on weeknights. I transferred all recurring bills, utilities, internet, mortgage payments, onto my individual card. Anything she used regularly I cut off access to. Streaming services, food apps, shared rideshare accounts. Passwords were changed. Devices desynced. Felt sterile but necessary, like cauterizing a wound. Next came the accounts she didn't even know I still had control over. When we first got serious, we digitized everything. Cloud backups, shared storage, e-statements. Out of convenience, I had admin access to nearly all of it. She never cared, never asked. But I remembered. I went through and collected everything. Travel points, loyalty programs, subscription renewals. Anything that might give her leverage or convenience through association with me was either disabled or reassigned. It wasn't about revenge. It was about removal. I didn't want any more overlap. Next came her stuff. I took 2 suitcases from the hall closet, the same ones we used on our first trip to Colorado, and filled them with her essentials. I didn't trash anything. I didn't leave petty notes. I folded everything. Shoes in pairs. Toiletries sealed in a Ziploc. Her favorite candle wrapped in a sweater she always wore on rainy days. Then I boxed the rest. 3 labeled bins. Closet, office, bathroom. Every item sorted. Every drawer emptied. I even packed her charger cables with the correct matching devices. Everything else she left behind. Books, frames, trinkets, went into a 4th box labeled MISC. In an envelope on top, I placed the hotel receipts, the printed screensh *TS, and the tiny bracelet with the engraved R. Not as punishment, just so she couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. The entire process took under 2 hours. I moved with precision like someone installing a firewall. Every drawer I opened, every setting I changed, chipped away at the illusion that we were still us. And the more I moved, the more I realized how automated our life had become. How many shared systems we had set up, trusting we'd never need to undo them. When it was done, I stacked her bags by the door. I didn't tell her to leave that night. I wanted to, but some part of me, maybe the part that still remembered anniversaries and inside jokes, knew it'd be cleaner in the morning. So I slept on the couch. Not because she asked, because I couldn't stand the thought of her breathing beside me. The next morning I woke up early. The sun had barely risen. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I made coffee, just 1 cup, and opened my laptop. Haley worked at a mid-sized agency. I knew some of her colleagues by name, others only through stories. I also knew she was mid-project on a client handover, and she was already behind on timelines. That gave me an opportunity. I found her Teams project channel and logged in. She had left her Slack open. Rookie mistake. I didn't say much. Just dropped a message in her team thread. Hi all. Just a quick note that Haley won't be available for the remainder of the week. She's asked me to ensure her deliverables are transferred securely. I'll be forwarding documentation shortly. Polite. Professional. No details. No emotion. Then I drafted an email to her supervisor, Mr. Davis. Hi, Mr. Davis. I'm reaching out to confirm Haley's current files and task logs have been archived. She's currently dealing with some urgent personal matters and wanted to ensure nothing is left hanging. You'll find attached a summary of her active items and client handover notes, based on her recent work-from-home documentation. Please feel free to contact me if anything is unclear. I'll coordinate with her for retrieval later this week. Regards, Nathan Clark. I triple-checked it. No drama. No accusations. Just structure. Language that bought me time and covered her absence without throwing her under the bus. By the time she woke up, her job had been notified, her belongings had been packed, and her access to everything had been cleanly revoked. She came downstairs in silence. Wore the same hoodie she always did when she wanted to be casual. Her eyes were puffy. No makeup. Just raw, red exhaustion. She saw the bags by the door. Then she saw me. At the table, laptop open, coffee half full. "Nate!" she started, her voice cracking. I didn't look up. "There's a car coming at 10. It'll take you to wherever you need." Her hands trembled. Can we just talk for 5 minutes?" I finally looked at her. And for a moment, I felt that familiar ache. Like seeing a burned-down house and remembering the laughter that once echoed through its halls. "No," I said softly. "Not anymore." She didn't argue, didn't cry, just stood there, absorbing the weight of the silence. Eventually, she nodded. "I'll text you about forwarding the rest," she mumbled. I didn't answer. She picked up the bags without another word. At 9:58, the car arrived. By 10:03, she was gone. The house felt still. Not empty, not peaceful, just still. Like the pause after a storm, where you're not sure if it's over or if something else is coming. I walked through each room. Her scent lingered faintly in the fabric of the couch, in the towels folded neatly on the rack. But she wasn't here anymore. Not really. That version of her, the one I loved, had been gone long before the bracelet, long before Ryan. This just made it official. I sat back down, opened my laptop again, and began typing out a list. Not for her. For me. Things to change. Things to rebuild. Things that were mine alone now. Clean break. No chaos. Just the beginning of the end. The first few days after she left were strange. Not heartbreaking. Not dramatic. Just strangely silent. It was like the air in the house had changed. No perfume clinging to door frames. No second toothbrush by the sink. No phantom laughter from down the hall. The space she used to take up just wasn't there anymore. What hit me hardest wasn't grief. It was the sheer absence of her. As if she'd been quietly edited out of every room. I didn't waste time trying to process it all emotionally. I wasn't ready. Instead, I shifted into practical mode. There was too much to do. Too many things to reassess. Haley and I hadn't just shared a home. We shared logistics, insurance, even professional contacts in overlapping industries. I knew I couldn't let this bleed into my career. I worked in finance, private advisory, a lot of high-net-worth clients, startups, foundations, early-stage funds. The job required a clean image, steady hands, long game. What had just happened in my personal life? That wasn't something I could afford to let leak into boardrooms. But something else was brewing beneath the surface. A need to do things differently. For years, I'd helped others manage their wealth, diversify their portfolios, make safe bets. I'd seen the backroom deals, the policy exceptions, the quiet arrangements that made people very rich, but left everything else tangled. Too often, ethics were an afterthought. And honestly, I was tired of it. I think that's what the betrayal did most clearly. It snapped me out of autopilot. If even Haley, the woman who once wrote love notes on napkins, could lie so easily, then maybe trust itself had to be earned in new ways. In all parts of life, I didn't just want to move on from her. I wanted to build something untainted by her. That week, I met with a few colleagues I respected. People who were sharp but principled. One of them, Paul Martinez, a compliance attorney I'd collaborated with in the past, had just left his firm to consult independently. We grabbed coffee by the marina. He looked at me carefully over the rim of his cup. "You look like a guy who just made a very big decision," he said. "I did," I told him. "I'm starting a new fund." He raised an eyebrow. "You're leaving Bennett Rowe?" "Not just leaving, replacing it. I'm building something leaner, cleaner. No backchannel politics. No bloated structures." He leaned back. "What's the angle?" "Transparency," I said. "Hardlined compliance. Zero tolerance for shady deal flow or nepotism. Every client vetted. Every policy enforced. No exceptions. Paul laughed under his breath. That's not just a fund. That's a mission. Exactly, I said. Took me 48 hours to draft the framework. The name came fast, Clark Ethical Investments. Clean, personal, direct. I bought the domain, filed the LLC, and started cold recruiting. I wasn't after volume. I wanted precision. Partners who believed in doing things right, even if it took longer. And surprisingly, people responded. 3 of my old clients reached out within a week. Not because I pitched them, but because they'd heard I'd left. Turns out, more people were hungry for clean investing than I'd expected. One of them, a venture partner from Boston, said, "You always made us feel like someone was watching the books. We need more of that." So I built around that need. I wrote internal policies with teeth, conflict of interest disclosure forms that couldn't be waved off, onboarding processes that required narrative transparency, not just numbers. No favors. No IOU deals. If someone wanted access to our fund, they had to go through the whole process, just like everyone else. The first hire was Layla, an equity strategist I'd worked with before. Smart as hell, ruthless with data, and zero tolerance for nonsense. The second was Evan, a young sustainability analyst who'd once exposed a greenwashing scandal at his former firm. They weren't just resumes. They were signals. Signals that this was a different kind of place. On our first team Zoom call, I told them the truth. This company wasn't born from ambition, I said. It was born from a fire. Not the kind that burns everything down. The kind that forces you to rebuild from scratch. If you're here, it's because you care about doing things right. Not easy, right? Layla nodded. Evan just typed amen into the chat. I felt something click. Like maybe I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was building forward. A few days later, I got an unexpected email. Haley's old supervisor, Mr. Davis. Subject line, handoff complete. Also, quick note. He wrote, "Nathan, just wanted to let you know the transition was seamless. Appreciate your professionalism. Most people wouldn't have been as thorough. Also, I heard about your new venture from a mutual contact. I'd be very interested in discussing it further. Full disclosure. I've grown tired of the way traditional firms operate. If you're open to it, I'd like to connect. Not on Haley's behalf, strictly business. Best, Mark Davis." I read that message twice. Then I closed my laptop and walked out onto the balcony. The breeze off the bay felt cooler than usual. Not sharp, not cutting, just honest. I stood there for a long time, not thinking about Haley, not thinking about Ryan, not wondering what could have been, just breathing. A week later, I met Davis for lunch. We talked for 2 hours. He wasn't looking for a job. He had his own capital and wanted to co-develop a micro-fund tied to community-led sustainability projects. Too many investors look at ESG as a checkbox, he said. What if we make it the whole form? We shook hands that afternoon. Just like that, Clark Ethical had its first collaborative partner. The funny part is, if Haley hadn't made the choices she did, if she hadn't lied, hadn't drifted, hadn't tried to cover it all with half gifts and long absences, I might never have left Bennett Row. I might have stayed on the hamster wheel, playing nice with boardrooms full of men who wore integrity like a tailored suit, only for appearances. But now I was building something that didn't need to be patched together with PR statements. It had no old wallpaper to hide behind. It had a foundation I could stand on. Every time I filled out another application, every time I sat across from a potential partner, I told them the same thing. This isn't about beating the market. This is about beating the old way of doing things. Some nodded. Some walked away. The ones who stayed, those were the people I wanted. Not just for business, but for whatever came next. Haley sent a few short apologies, but I never answered. No fights, no chaos, just silence. I moved into a smaller place near the bay, sold half my things, and poured everything into the fund. What started as a reaction became a rhythm. Steady clients, honest deals, zero drama. The absence of noise wasn't lonely. It was peace. At a conference in Portland, I met Lauren, a consultant focused on ethical sourcing. Smart, direct, steady. Only later did I learn she was Haley's sister. But we didn't talk about the past. We built something slow and clean, grounded in trust. I wasn't trying to fix what broke. I was building something new, and this time I knew exactly where I stood.